Hello, onlookers! I frequent this page so often that I have decided that I live here now. So, welcome to my house, which is called Vampire the Masquerade Games Jam, for I am doing all 88 entries for all games deserve to be played and enjoyed, honestly and completely, for that is what we're trying to do here. This is just my free time for the rest of the month. And to start off, just like I did in the last episode, I am gonna be going through plain browser games simply because I don't need to pre-plan this. This way I can just click on the play in browser and have the game up and running without actually needing to go out and download and make sure that it works and yada 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 yada. I can do that during the weekend, or when I actually have time. During weekdays, when I have a lot of work, that's just, my brain goes nope, and I go nope with it. So, I have actually sorted it by submission order today, instead of having the sort on random, because then the page just keeps on jumping around and it's very distracting. So we did one from here and one from here in the last episode, and as I sorted it, I'm just gonna go left to right. And we are gonna start with Blood Frontier. Blood Frontier was made by Disney, I think. I think that is correct. I'm just reading off the... How is it called? I'm reading off the bar because it has to be your name, .itch.io, .itch.io, and then the game name. I gotta say though, the page length is not the most comfortable one. Ooh, what is this? Includes graphic depictions of violence, yada yada yada. We're an adult now, I am sure of it. Chapter 1. La Mano Negra, or the Black Hand. I was born on the prairies, where the wind blew free and there was nothing to break the light of the sun. I was born where there were no enclosures. Geronimo! Okay, you probably are not supposed to pronounce Geronimo like that. I have an idea, and the idea includes me just going royalty-free music megamix, because I do like having at least some sound. Spooky. I'll add spooky. Free background music, you say? Okay. This will work. Good enough. Darkness. You wake from day sleep in a tarpaulin envelope. It keeps deadly sunlight off your pale dead skin during the morning hours, but also keeps odors in, the soot and grime from dozen days on the trail. Well, there's no need for you to breathe, not anymore. You can smell it just the same. The bag swishes as you feel around for the zipper. Kindred, that's the word you're supposed to use instead of vampire, so you don't get to thinking you're Bela Lugosi. Like every dusk since your embrace, your sires is the first voice you hear. And he sounds like my cat does. My sire is really not happy today. Hi, Biggie. Nice for you to play a role in here. Yeah. Good boy. Eesh. This reminds me the start of the Night Road. Because on the Night Road you also have to pitch tents and sleep inside sleeping bags. Hadri says, "Buenas noches, my daughter, as I identify as a woman." You pull the zipper, then peel back the bag to see your sire waiting with a hand held out to help you. Same black frock, same white collar. The beads of his rosary, desert ironwood, match the grips of the .44 revolver on his hip, dark brown run through with swirls of yellow-orange. You take his hand and he helps pull you to your feet. Then the two of you watch in quiet as the red glow of the sun seeps beneath dark horizon, and the first stars take its place. Already you're hungry. Ravenous. So am I, honestly, but it doesn't feel like appropriate to eat a biscuit right now, especially considering that my coffee's like really hot. Class first, then breakfast, Padre says. He sits on a log, takes off his cowboy boots, and breaks out his polish kit. By the time you pack your bag, you know the black snakeskin will shine like the oiled black hair combed back from his forehead so it hangs just above the nape of his neck. What? 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 Good boy. The cat is just atmosphere, don't mind it. You must have died, however long ago, with stubble, since the flecks that pepper his olive cheeks never grow or go away. Wow, what a... good observational skills there, me. I mumbled to myself that Kindred need to figure out a food delivery service. We can order, how you say? DoorDash, and then you bite the driver, but I don't think that they deliver out here, Patrick says. Yes, just call in a delivery boy and eat the driver. Damn this desert heat, the voice says. Dakota, she rises from the dirt beside you. She dusts herself off. Since she melts with the earth and sleeps beneath it, she doesn't need a day bag. You haven't learned this trick yet, Padre says. Other kindred? The other clans? They can't all do it either. This doesn't stop Dakota from pointing out that you're the youngest every chance she gets. You pick a pebble or two from her short blonde curls and then brush a dried stand of ragweed from the spaghetti strap of her cream-colored satin romper dress, the kind that looks like a mini skirt but with shorts sewn in underneath. A tiny gecko scurries into her plunging neckline, and she plucks it out with her thumb and the forefinger and tosses it on the ground. She asks how you say it's hotter than hell in Spanish. I don't speak Spanish. I appreciate the ability to speak Spanish, but if the game asked me anything in Spanish, I would need to go to Google Translate, and that's not a thing I want to do right now. Come on, vamanos, Padre says. We got work to do. He's already finished polishing his first boot. If he finishes the second before you're ready, he might just leave you behind, so you get to it. By now you know the deal. Well, I get dressed and pack my things, and Dakota can do whatever she wants with the camp. You kneel beside the rucksack and wipe the dust from the plastic that covers the card with your name on it, and not your old name, your new one. The tag reads Ocho. Yeah, the number. You fish a change of clothes out from the bottom of your bag, because your nose says it's about that time. This far south, everyone dresses like a cowboy. They all have their own reasons, whether it's function, fashion, or just to blend in. I'm an urban cowboy. I dress for style and to express myself. Honestly, gangrels could come at me all they want. But I guarantee you they couldn't make me drop my clothes. Well, I mean, they could rip them off me, but... black every day for forever, sister. I just don't roll any other way. And hey, black is the first word in fashion and the only color you wear. We have so much in common. Is it a homage to Johnny Cash? If it makes people like you more, then yes. Otherwise, it's chic, slimming, and matches everything. Black western button down with white pearl snaps, black designer jeans that show off that ass of yours, and black belt to match your low-cut boots. Less practical than full length, but you don't want anyone thinking that you're a rancher. For finishing touches, you go with a silver bolo with a black leather cinch. It's fitted with a stone of white buffalo turquoise, and it goes without saying you wear sunglasses even though it's night. I wear my sunglasses at night. Dressed and ready, you start to feel like yourself, or look it at least. You pack your things into your bag and get ready to go. From the looks of your scattered possessions, it's easy to see why Padre chose to embrace you as his child. The man may be many things, but impractical isn't one of them. My possessions make it obvious that outside of combat, I have a mental skill set. Neither. I have an occult skill set. I don't think anyone would actually find that useful. Hey, would you like a tarot reader / psychic to follow you around? I don't know why you would ever. I mean, I could tell you what colors of the rainbow are people's auras. How would that be useful? I don't know. What do you sense of the person in front of you? Oh, he's a bit like dried licorice. What does that mean? I have no idea. Why don't you talk with him? The one time you worked up the nerve to ask Padre why he chose you, the only word he said was cabaza. Head, referring to the brain inside. Then tap 2 fingers on your temple. It's there, somewhere, in the sum of your things. Tell that shows how mental you are. A calculator, a compass, and the physician's desk reference. You know what? I was a medic with park services until one night on search and rescue I thought it was a bear attack. I would never have been smart enough to be a medic, and that takes one hell of a lot of work and practice to be there. I can program, but not even working as a programmer right now. This person was awesome. In all those hours of lectures and textbooks, they taught you critical theory, scientific method, and how to overthink. Well, they tried to. You learned the first 2 at least. But that all seems so long ago. Of course, aside from all that, every cowboy's a fighter in one way or another, and every gangrel besides. You draw your weapon from your day bag, where it slept beside you. I'm gonna have a knife. We're now doing matching Myrta's character to Myrta. Just because I actually have a knife. It's a legal one to own, actually, because this would be classed as a hunting knife, and it's short enough that it's not seen as dangerous. I use it for literally everything. Breaking pieces of wood that I can make wicks out of for candles if I need to reinforce the flame, breaking down wax. It comes in useful, among other things. Even cutting nice slices of paper. You know, in case I needed to explain my purpose for having a knife around me at all times. In Texas, you never fully dressed until you're armed. Now you're ready to meet the world and the challenges ahead. Well, I'm gonna help Dakota break down camp. Dakota collects the solar batteries she left charging on the rock, checks to see that they're full, and then deposits them in her ruck. You took your sweet time, didn't you? She tosses you a folding shovel and a Ziploc bag full of acorns. It always falls to you to cover your tracks. Gangrel or not, Dakota doesn't like to get dirt under her nails. Once she's been to the wash basin, she says that her looking good benefits everyone. It's hard to disagree once you see what it does to kind. That's the word you use for humans now. You dig a few holes around where you slept and fill them with acorns and cover them up with dirt. Inside an hour, a sounder of feral hogs ought to sniff their way over and tear the place up, digging for dinner. Good luck tracking you then. Dakota packs the rest of the gear. Ropes, stakes, water jugs, and a whole mess of horse scare items. You help her with the tool bag and and hear the clank of bolt cutters against the thermos filled with all-important duct tape. She says, "Careful with that stuff, you hear?" Well, this is called pecking order. I'll just nod and go along with it. She's older, she knows what she's doing. "Oh, are we playing the quiet game now?" she says. "That's fine, as long as you listen." When everything's staged for loading, she pitches a silver hair clip between her lips, one designed to look like an eagle feather, so she can use her hands to pull her hair back. The motion makes her breasts lift gently beneath her dress, so that her horseshoe amulet lifts up too. She retrieves the pin from her lips, then clamps her hair back so it doesn't fly in her face when she's riding. "All right, go ahead," she says. "Ask your question." She waits on what has become a nightly game. "When you first turned up, she gave you cold shoulder. She said she weighed around to see if you made it before she bothered to get to know you. There's a steep curve to survival for fledglings of the prairie. Then a few weeks back, she said if you're going to stick around, you might as well learn about each other. Now, this is what you do. You think about your question for tonight." I'll ask her what she did before all of this, why not? "Have we made it this long without getting around to that?" she says. "Huh. Well, I worked the Midwest rodeo circuit as a horse trainer, but I learned it all. Lasso, bullwhip, showmanship. Should have seen me in my leather American flag outfit with fringe all up the sides of my arms and legs. After your question, she sends you on your way. Much as she's about the Southern hospitality, there's something about the way she carries herself that makes you think she's not just talk. Else why would Padre bring her along?" I'm gonna say that Padre enjoys her company. Well, time to check on the horses. You find your horse grazing in the field not too far away. For a while, you just watch her movements, your mare. She's grace incarnate, the way her muscles ripple beneath her shimmering hair. Even at a slow gallop, motion reveals the perfection of her form. A breeze whisks through her silken mane and carries your scent to her. When she turns to see you, big eyes, her tail flits, and she comes to you unbidden, nuzzling her muzzle in your hand. You press your forehead against hers and then rub her shoulders the way that she likes. I'm gonna say that she's Arabian, deep brown with a black mane that matches her tail, and named her Bonnie after the outlaw. This thing, outside of the fact that I had to find royalty-free music that is honestly fitting the atmosphere really well, this thing is really well written. The way the two of you get on makes you wonder if you could have been anything other than gangrel. Lovers of animals, being so much like animals yourselves. You read somewhere how Americans would have lost the Revolutionary War if not for their horses. The country itself and the freedom it's so proud of, it owes to creatures such as these. It's hard to imagine any proper cowboy without one. You hear Dakota explain it. Gangrel chose all sorts of femulae, from falcons to crocodiles. He says that the choice says everything about the chooser. With Padre, though, there was never any choice. If you want to ride with him, you have to ride. He says there's no all-terrain vehicle that can do what a horse on Vitae can. Shit, it's important enough that he made it the third of his 3 rules. Have a horse and take good care of it. That's after no phones and stay out of cities. So it must matter to him a lot. More than that, though, it keeps you on touch with the way of life, with your mission and the history of the land. So you learned at least that much of the animalism discipline. Enough to fulfill Rule 3. From there, you were free to focus your studies however you wanted. I like the idea of protein. Honestly, if I could grow claws, you know I would. That's not the only thing I would grow, but... Not thinking about... I was thinking about wings. Though that's not really a Prothean thing, but you know, a girl can dream. It was a hard thing at first. Schooling your horse, feeding it your blood to forge a bond between you. Not that there wasn't a bond before, but now it's so much more. The same blood courses through both of you. You barely separate creatures. But addiction's a thing. Animals and kind get high off the taste of vitae, that they get strung out if they go too long without it. You didn't know if you could do that to a horse, but you knew even less what you would do without her. So here you are, the two of you. You might ride together for all of time. Even a base familiarity with animalism forms a mental link, so you could communicate simple commands to her without a word spoken. I'll rub her ears and pat her neck. Because I'm a good girl and I like horses. That came out extra wrong. Completely ignored it. I just said that. She snorts and licks your hand by the way of saying she's good to go. The other two horses trot into view. First, Nosh, his Padre's mono black Frisian, standing at 17 hands. Something about the dignity of his musculature, the elegance of his gait, mimics Padre's own. It suggests he knows his ancestors carried medieval knights. Next comes Dakota's grey Mustang without a bit of wild tamed out of her. The way she snuffs at the sky, you would think she provoked the moon. Somehow you doubt her rider would have it any other way. Those who think your lost soul's coterie numbers 3 are sorely mistaken. There are 6 of you. You don't have to lead Bonnie by the reins. In fact, she doesn't have any. You share a bond. As she follows you, Notch and Lucky follow her. Even the best horses don't get to graze so freely without being tied to a post. These, you know, are better than the best. Now, time for the evening lesson. Woo! You and Dakota sit side by side on the ground across from Padre, who now has both his boots shined to polish on his feet. He pulls a knife from one and uses it to sketch a jagged line in the dirt between you. Before long, it's obvious that what he's drawn in the border between the United States and Mexico. Escucha, he says. Listen, he taps the tip of his knife onto the end of the line, and the other. 2,000 miles, más o menos, more or less. He lets that sink in before he uses the flat of the blade to erase the left third of the line. That part we don't care about. California, Arizona, New Mexico, not our problema. So what's left? 1,200 miles where Texas touches Mexico. From El Paso here, he digs to the point of his knife into the westernmost remainder of the line. To Brownsville here, he smacks the flat of the blade down on the easternmost part of the line, along where the Gulf Coast would be. So 12 autarkies, coteries, the border tribes, each responsible for 100 milas, 100 miles. Autarkies is outsiders. Come in, free music. I already said free music that you can come in. 100 miles, I say. That's a lot of land for so few to cover. Padre says we'll spread thin. Es verdad, it's true. But we get help from the Camarilla and Anarchs both. Before you can ask, Dakota says that they're really helping themselves. It's in their interests. Austin, Dallas, Houston. They're installed us as a buffer. If there's no buffer, they'll have all our problems on top of theirs. Think of it as enemies with benefits. Padre nods, proud of his older child. Bien. They have financial reasons. Pesos. Our stability is good for them. Well, which of the sects do you prefer? Neither answers. They both seem to know what the other would say, but you don't. You haven't been around as long. When you persist, Padre says, it's easy to criticize the thing that's there when you don't know all that goes into it. It sounds like he would vote for Camarilla. Dakota says old ways don't just map out new worlds. It sounds like the vote is for Anarchs. Apparently there's leanings even among the outsiders. The only thing they seem to agree on is that both of the other sects are better than the Sabbat. You haven't heard much about them, but what little you have wasn't good. You decide not to press your luck for now, and if I had to be in that world and join, I would probably not join because... To be fair, I would dig the Demon Bros, and that would probably definitely not turn out too well for me, but still. Demon Bros. Now wait, what is Autarkies again? Padre looks at Dakota and waits for her to answer. She holds out for a moment, but then sighs and says, "It means outsiders, that we aren't Camarilla or Anarchs either. The kindred between sects get charged with the lands between countries." "Bueno," Padre says, then tells you, I don't know why Padre is Italian now, because that has been an Italian accent. Tells you to explain the difference between the Camarilla and the Anarchs. You tell him that what you can't remember. The Camarilla run things like a pyramid scheme, where the ones on the top make it out better than all the ones below. You got rules and titles, and then towards formal, thought up to 6 traditions, which seem like they've been good for everyone. Anarchs, on the other hand, want to break the mold of tradition. They're future-minded in terms of policy and tech, and make a lot of noise about freedom. This is all hearsay, though. You barely set foot in the city since you were turned. Dakota rolls her eyes and says it sound like the answers that the other sects would give. She asks what's the difference really between the two. Padre takes a moment to think on it, and cracks a smile and says, "Dale tiempo el tiempo." Only time. If the Anarchs come into power, corruption and need would make them into something like Camarilla. I say, so the 12 border tribes watched the line, but who decided that? I'm gonna blow out one of my candles because it smells really nice and it's almost over and I don't want it to be over. Let the good things last. Necesidad. Padre says necessity. He stands and leaves. He asks Dakota if you said something wrong. She says it's sore subject. Shortest version, things were bad, so he took over. She teases that gangrel newcomers learn the slowest because the clan tends to talk the least. If you were a Ventru, she says, we would have talked so much already that you would know everything. She pats your arm and then helps you to your feet. Well, you know what? Slow and steady wins the race. To be fair, if you're prepared to live for eternity, it's a completely fine attitude to have. I'm not prepared to live for eternity, but even I don't need all the knowledge in the world. I like knowledge. In my specific subjects that I very specifically investigate. But even if I have no time, I still have time. Because when the time comes, what is it that you will leave unfinished, really? A couple of books unread, a couple of games unplayed, big deal. You know? It's not like I'm deciding the fate of the world, so it's all fine, all good. All in due time, slow and steady, no rush. The 3 of you ride out. Steady hoofbeats sound across the dwindling distance between you and where you're going. You pass formations of red rocks jutting from the sand, arches, columns, and boulders. Padre says it's sandstone, only it's dyed red by the iron inside. From a distance, they looked stripped, like long stacks of the same material with narrow hollows between them. These times, when you're up close, you see that they're pitted with little round holes the wind sometimes whistles through, places where other kinds of rocks get knocked loose over time. Every so often you hear a coyote yip and chuckle or an owl screech, and Padre tenses up or rests a palm on the butt of his revolver. It seems a little paranoid, but what do you know? Your world is a lot stranger than it was just months before. Somewhere along the way, Padre says you're 25 miles from the outskirts of Presidio. He points and you can see the distant shimmer of city lights blurred by ripples of heat. A tumbleweed rolls by and Padre says if you keep standing around, the tumbleweed will beat you to where you're going. Long silences give you time to digest what you learned. I have a hate boner for anarchs, so anarchs sound like a bunch of impotent naysayers. That makes me happy. I have to pause when Dakota's horse Lucky steps in the prairie dog hole and breaks her leg. Oh! Oof! Padre and Dakota calm the pained creature as she huffs and whines on the ground. A normal horse, Dakota says, you would have to put down. You've done it before and it's sad to see, but a famulus, it can use Vitae to mend its own wounds. There's lots else Vitae can do, you reckon. Fuel disciplines boost your physical attributes and make your skin look like it's not dead at all. The blush of life, the last one's called. The horse stands, its pride the only thing left hurting. While Dakota leads Lucky around by the reins to work out any kinks, Padre mutters about the moonlight. Something about how the full moon helps you see while you travel at night, but how it comes with other problems. You don't think he's talking about prairie dog holes. You get moving again. After a while plodding along, Padre raises a fist. You stop Boney with pressure from your knees, then wait. Smell that? Padre says. You don't. You catch a faint whiff of sage on the breeze. The smell of cedar in the open air, but that's all just normal Texas scents. You heard that other clans can heighten their senses to see further and hear better. Auspex, it's called. But how could Padre know how to do that if he's not natural to Clan Gangrel? Another question for your growing pile. Dakota meets your eyes and raises a finger to her lips. She dismounts from Lucky, you follow her lead. Padre tells you to wait at the base of the hill beneath a lone southern oak with gnarled branches and looming leaves. Then he changes. First his eyes turn golden, feline. Next he hunches over and turns away as his clothing dissolves into yellowish fur, mottled with brown spots outlined in black. His hands and feet turn into clawed paws of a cat with pink pads and pink pads and white fur beneath. Ears, whiskers, tail, with a snarl through fanged teeth, the transformation is complete. You have seen a Mexican jaguar in the wild since the 2 or 3 deaths away from extinction. Fewer still has seen one like this. I need to learn to do that. You watch the jaguar that was Padre slink into shadow until Dakota takes your cheeks together in one hand and turns your face toward her. It always looks like she's wearing lip gloss, but her lips are just that pink. Meth lab, mobile, probably, she says. They're not with any of ours, or we would have known that they were there. She tells you these types come armed and ignorant. The guns are no-go since the facilities are explosive. The last thing you need is to start a wildfire. Rot, Shrek! The state of blind fear, kindred brought on by sight or fear of flame, would have you running wild. Whatever you do, she says, make sure. Bang! She stops speaking when she hears a gunshot. It can't be Padre, since he's a cat at the moment. Shit! While you're still putting things together, Dakota does that thing she does when she steels herself with fortitude. Deep breath. Mean eyes. Then her fingernails extend and turn into eagle talons. She charges over the hill. Damn, she didn't finish her sentence. Whatever you do, don't make sure to what? Throw your bowie and follow her. I'll follow Padre. It's probably very, very dangerous, but I'll follow Padre. You tried to anyway. You thought you would find his tracks, but end up finding human ones. Before long, you find the human they belong to. A bit sweaty fat guy stumbles into view wearing a gas mask so tight that the head strips pinch down on his mullet. Maybe he was a cook in the trailer. There's a bloody rake across the front of his orange University of Texas t-shirt, torn fabric and slashed skin flaps. Anyhow, he sees you. He has no weapon except his hands, but they look like they could do the job. I would need a big knife for a guy like this. Fortunately, I have just the thing. You draw the bowie and close in to finish what Padre started. You sidestep a fist the size of ham knock, then duck in wild swing. Each time the edge of your blade leaves its mark until it's not just sweat that the man's leaking. You lacerate a calf, sever tendon, and slice above his brow. so that his own blood blinds him. When he falls over, you leave him to bleed out. It seems safe to say he won't be cooking meth again anytime soon. I don't know. Maybe there's meth labs in afterlife. In all seriousness, don't die with an addiction. I'm not saying that everybody has to follow the same belief set as me, but think of how much it would suck to be stuck as a dead person, like having a craving for something you definitely can no longer have. You don't want to do that to yourself. You move on. Muzzle flashes light up the dark like fireflies. Shots crack the air. Tall grass grazes your shins as you crest the rise, and the lab comes into view. It's not single trailer, but 3. If they were ever mobile, they aren't anymore. Around the makeshift compound, 3 shiny steel airstreams rest on the cinder blocks in a semicircle around the charred black burn pit. Whoever financed the operation sprung for an actual plastic outhouse. At the moment, Dakota crouches behind it, using it for cover. A pair of pit bulls snarl in a dog kennel littered with fresh deer bones, and a woman in overalls with one leg and crutches hobbles toward it. Padre is a blur of fur and shadow, drawing fire from 2 guys in trucker hats. From the flesh of their faces, you're guessing that they have been at the bottle. However, it's not as if assault rifles want for accuracy. 3 people in rubber gloves and aprons pour from the side trailers into the middle trailer, one of them carrying a soup cauldron. Despite the gunfight, a radio on an empty oil drum plays Sweet Home Alabama like South has a mind of its own. I'm gonna trust my teammates and I'm gonna go after the woman on crutches, plus it sounds like an easy target. The one-legged woman beats you to the dog crate. Her yellow smile is missing teeth as she pulls the pin from the top of the kennel. The cage door flies open and a pair of snarling pit bulls rush in your direction. You take up a ready stance beside a garbage heap as the dogs approach. Among the trash there's rain-soaked, dirty magazines, a plaster garden gnome someone shot the face off of, a lawnmower with a busted bag, and heavy wooden table covered with mold and pollen that's missing 2 of its legs. I'm just gonna use protein because I do like protein, so rawr. As the first dog leaps, you swat it from the air, severing its foreleg at the shoulder. It goes down in a heap and lays whining on the ground as it bleeds out. The second dog goes for your leg, but you're able to move in time, planting a swift kick on the front of its snout. You follow up by battling the side of its face with your claw. It slices through its skull and makes a ruin off its eye. It's gone in one loud yelp before it even hits the ground. As you turn your attention to the woman on crutches, she turns to make her getaway. That's when one of the guys in rubber gloves opens up a MAC-10 submachine gun from the window of the middle airstream. Lead sprays dirt all around you and you aren't hit, but the woman on crutches is. You're 3 times in the chest. She falls to join her dogs upon the ground. Well, time to stop the shooters before they turn Padre into a rug. For all they know, they're shooting at an actual jaguar, which is illegal to hunt, and nearly extinct. You think you would care when the jaguar is aiming for you. I don't think you would. One of them curses about his gun jamming, the other messes about trying to fix it. You wait for the other to pause to swap clips before you make your move. You creep past the burn pit to get closer. Hello, creepy doll music. Inside there's a busted wooden barrel, a dented lawn chair, and an old metal refrigerator lined with orange rust. The door hangs from one hinge. I'm gonna rip the cord off the refrigerator and use it to choke the one reloading. If it was me, I still have the claws, it would just... As the cord comes free, the sound alerts them. You jet in and wrap the rubber-encased braid of the wire around the neck of the shooter. with the working weapon just as he gets his new clip into the magazine. Well, in his struggle to keep from choking, he accidentally discharges an AK, spraying a hail of bullets into the other man's chest. He falls to the ground where Padre gets a hold of his throat. The one you strangle quits struggling when he tops off his ears turn purple. When they both down, Padre drags the still twitching form of one back into the bushes, then reverts to his human form. You leave him to his feeding. Padre's getting that meth head blood tonight. Dakota looks like she's in deep shit. As you get closer, you see a man and woman pause from shooting their crossbows at the outhouse, which now looks like it quarreled with a porcupine. They take cover behind a pile of junk, an old porcelain toilet, a rusted stop sign full of bullet holes, broken wicker furniture, and a dead sapling in an orange ceramic pot. Dakota gasps as she drags a bolt through the flesh of her thigh. Split at the attention is between Dakota and whatever they're doing. You're able to sneak up on them unaware. Well, I know enough about science to see that they're making a Molotov cocktail. You pick up a snub-nosed 357 from the dead guy on the ground, aim it at the bottle and shoot. Glass sprays and fire follows. The pair go down, shredded and burning. It's a mean way to die, you think, but you console yourself that they were drug dealers who shot Dakota. Anyway, the fire has you distracted. Though sheer will, you manage to keep from running. You tell Dakota something stinks by the way of asking if she's alright. Dakota says it's probably your breath by the way of saying that she's fine and not the least bit grateful because she had everything handled. Still, she needs a moment to mend her wounds, so you should go do something else. Tell her you love her too. Time to deal with the cooks in the center airstream. When the three of you, Dakota and Padre, regroup outside the center airstream, Dakota doesn't mention a thing about you being the youngest. Before you can form a plan, you hear the sound of the engine turn. A white Silverado pickup with one working headlight goes skirting across the plain. On it, Dakota says and whistles. In a blink of an eye, Lucky comes speeding by and Dakota whips up onto the saddle, hands around the horse's neck without Lucky having to stop or even slow. They close on the truck like it's sitting still, and the last you see before they disappear from sight is Dakota standing crouched on the horse's back and leaping into the bed of the pickup. I tried to math the acceleration she would need to overtake a truck like that. You know what that is, Padre says. He points to a wide dugout clearing encircling a compound. The meth cooks bar, the door of the airstream, and shout curses. A fire break, Padre says. He retrieves the AKs from where the shooters in the trucker hats fell and firing the broken rifle with 2 quick taps. And a charge of the handle, he hands you one, points at the airstream, and then says, Fuego! Fire! He points the barrel of his AK and dumps rounds, rotating his hips so the shots spread. I say adios and join in. Your gun rattles and stutters in your arms. It spits brass, smoking shells that cling as they hit the ground. More and more holes pock the face of the Airstream trailer. The screams get louder, but fewer until something hits something else and the white flash consumes your vision. A wave of heat follows, washing over your face, and when you can see again, the combat has turned into a blazing column of fire. Fire! Before you can even process it all, your feet are carrying you away as fast as they can, all on their own. You faintly hear Padre laughing behind you, but the sound fades as you race further away. Well, that's embarrassing. It takes you a few minutes before you settle down, then a few more for you to walk back. Along the way, you see the escaped pickup folded around the tree, a big hole in the driver's side window. The driver you find 100 feet away, not having blood anywhere near as much as he should have. Of course, Dakota drained him. She had left the wound closed. When you arrive back at the compound, the fire has mostly died down, but not enough that your stomach doesn't turn a little. Dakota walks the perimeter with an extinguisher taken from the truck, probably. He sprays the patches of flames, which pushed past the fire break. Padre sits on the back of a corpse and smokes a cigar, watching the flames fade to ash. Welcome back, he says. Oh, We're not. It's okay, we're young still, we're not that good. You split up and look for survivors. Before you made it very far, Padre finds one, a cook, then stands him up against the tree. You use, he says, a suit-covered man. The man doesn't understand, so Padre slams his head against the tree, then repeats the question. Drogas. Drugs. You use? Then the man says he doesn't. Padre sinks his fangs into the side of his neck and drains him dry, draining him until his legs start twitching and then until they stop. When this all started for you, Dakota said every kindred has a predator type. You feed a certain way or are off certain types of people. For instance, she's a siren. She prefers to feed during acts of sex. The kiss is immensely pleasurable for Kine, so she compounds the ecstasy. Feels like she's trading something for something. Patrick, though, he's what they call an alley cat. That means he only feeds, combative assault. Not all do, but he feeds all the way. It makes him stronger, but at a price, his humanity. Most kindred are never fully sated. They can't or don't want to pay that price. Patrick, he doesn't think twice. In weeks that followed, Dakota helped you figure out your own predator type. Well, to be fair, Patrick brings, if it's combat, it doesn't humanity count. Like, you can rationalize that they attacked you first. I only drink blood from medical bags. This is gonna be really, really bad for my character, I imagine. Patrick casts the corpse away, then moves on to look for other survivors. Dakota comes up beside you and says he's not really a priest, you know. In life a long time ago, he was a pistolero, a gunman and an outlaw. I found out one night when he drained a pimp who's been at Tequila. See, Padre escaped from an armed robbery to a mission that patched him up. He found love with his nurse, who was a nun, and gave them all the money he stole. Word is, that's where he was when they turned him, when whoever turned him did that deed. The rest he wouldn't say, not even drunk. You ask how, if being kindred is walking a tightrope between humanity and the beasts, some people can fulfill their daily needs with murder. He says it has to do with your own convictions. If the way or reason seems right to you, it doesn't hurt your soul, or doesn't hurt it as much. You say it sounds slippery. Justification. Dakota says, a beast I am lest a beast I become. Then she walks away. You recall how kindred who lose all their humanity become whites, given entirely to the beast. It makes you think on your own convictions. I feel my way through right and wrong in the moment. I am not entirely sure I would a good vampire make, or at least it would definitely be an interesting one, because I have given up on a set morality and embraced the flexible morality. I do what feels right to me as a person. And that doesn't actually mean that I am very, very naughty. It just means that I don't necessarily have a fixed moral code. So yeah, that would be very, very, And you're wondering, you come upon a dying man, not lucid enough for you to even question. Beneath his sweat and trembling, he mumbles a single phrase over and over again. La mano negra. The black hand? You dismiss it as nonsense. You aren't an alley cat, but that doesn't make his coursing red blood easy to resist. Through focus and restraint, you stay your fangs. He dies in pain and you stay hungry. You're left to wonder what he meant by the black hand. Maybe you thought his deeds were dirty. The three of you finish your sweep, making sure no living kind remain nearby. Padre says even in the wild we must uphold the masquerade, the vampiric code of secrecy. He tells you that you did a good thing there. It's hard to imagine the damage and destruction these dealers did and would do, not just to the lives of the drugs users, but also to the people around them and their friends and family. Batch after batch, these cooks would have destroyed hundreds of lives in dozens of cities. You ask him why he questioned the man he fed on about drug use. Patrick says that when someone uses substances, be it drugs or alcohol, kindred who feed on them suffer those effects secondhand. Many even do so on purpose, but not him. He likes to say sober, and angry! Well, addiction's hard for everyone involved. Oh, cool! I ceased local production of pink. Padre's expression falls when Dakota brings over a sealed baggie of pink meth rocks. He lifts it, sniffs, and then says it's minced with vitae. Someone's turning addicts into ghouls. Padre clenches his jaw, then snatches the bag, suddenly silent. He walks toward Notch and mounts. He looks at Dakota. Come on, she says. Looks like we have bigger problems than we thought. Ooh, chapter 2. Jesus, this is a long one. We have discovered a land rich in gold, pearls, and other things. Hernan Cortes. Miles pass as glimpses. A rock tumbles down a dirt slope. On near Conway tops a cracked earth hill where grass pants in the night breeze. A flock of sandhill cranes with long legs and longer necks scatters at your passing. A white-brown feather falls from fluttering wings. Dakota catches it and tucks it behind her ear. You pass beneath a rocky ridge where on top of the bighorn sheep lives. Well, I do love descriptions. I have a feeling that I kind of need to start skipping them by now because this is gonna be a very, very long one. These the high moments are few and far between. More often there is empty span before you and your horse beneath you, your coterie beside you and the night all around. One such moment, Patrick clears his dusty throat and growls for you to revisar los hechos, review the facts. You figure this is his way of pushing off teaching onto Dakota, so he doesn't have to say anything. Frank has his privileges. Dakota must feel the same, the way she huffs and gives you a glare like it's your fault she has to speak. Never one to do what expected, she insists, spurs her horse and stands up in the stirrups. She closes her eyes and spreads her arms. Probably it feels like she's flying, but from your vantage, the way the wind whips back her hair at the hem of her dress, she could be some kind of angel you see in the painting. Padre shakes his head but smirks. He waves you after her with the motion of his head, as if to say you better catch up if you want to learn anything. So you tap your heels to Bonnie's flank and she soars. The way she gallops, it feels like you spend more time off the ground than on it, and you can feel her exult in letting loose in the rush of pure freedom. Luckily, Dakota's horse takes your approach for a challenge, rebel that she is. Somehow she sprints even faster. Have to veer off to the side, get out from her dust trail, so thick that it blocks the stars. When it seems like you never catch her, Dakota sinks back into her saddle and cheers at the top of her lungs, panting despite not needing breath. Taking the reins, she circles back and comes alongside so close your calves brush from time to time. In fact, you're sure she nudges once, by the way of saying, "Did you see me?" Lucky struts head held high, affirmed in her superior speed, and Bonnie lowers her head just a little in shame. You must remain between her ears, and she raises her head again. "Briefing," Dakota says. Well, who are Los Bonitos anyway? I honestly, I don't know. I'm starting to blank out a bit. They're a coterie that runs these parts, Los Bonitos. The pretty ones or some such. Used to be 7 of them, but Padre decided a few months back to split them into 2. So 3 stayed in Los Bonitos, Bonnie, Pablo, and Marisol, while the other 4 formed another coterie. Yeah, I'm seeing stars. That's probably not a good thing. Like, literally right now. I forget the name. He did this because ops are booming, a real bonanza. So for the time being, things are strained. They have the same amount of work and half the people to do it. That's just temporary though. See, when Patrick gives them the go-ahead to fill out their ranks, a Sage coterie gets back up to 7, they'll have 14 of them doing the work that only 7 of them were doing before. You ask why they would need the go-ahead to embrace. She cites the 3rd tradition, "Thou shalt only sire with the permission of thine elder." That's a thinly veiled annoyance in her voice as she says it. She says that for the Camarillas, hard and fast law. For the autarkists, it's just good common sense. Like with tending flocks in the desert, land can only sustain certain numbers. Flocks have to spread out. With operations picking up, Padre's done the math that says this zone can handle more kindred. She laughs at the thought of Gangrel doing math and says it's more like a thinning they fell out. You ask if having the say-so doesn't make Padre the prince of the border tribes. Dakota shrugs. In function, yeah, but I wouldn't go around saying it. If you want, Dakota says, she could give you a rundown on the Los Bonitos members. That or she just shut up about it. Happy either way. I'll just form my own impressions. Well, what do they need us for? Need is a strong word, Dakota says, but I guess it's one I would use. All opportunity comes with the shared problems. I mentioned they're outnumbered, overburdened, but I didn't say with what. They're blood farmers, you see, Dakota explains, in the same way that we just a small part of America farms up corn for the whole rest of everyone. Well, it's like that with blood too. A group called the circulatory system bags blood and moves it all over. There's like a book on a blood farm that was written with like Vampire the Masquerade people permission. I forget the name now, but I did listen to it. It was pretty cool. You feed baggers, yeah, but those too. Places where maybe there aren't enough kind for the number of kindred. Places where regular old kindred want to dine in for a night. This black market system, the logistics would make your head spin. They even do rare vintages, resonances and the like. Blue bloods, there's some Ventry who only drink Italians or women or left-handed surfers. They all have their own thing. You say it sounds complicated. Dakota says it is and isn't. For the customer, it's just something they pay for and then put straw into, but if you pool the monies of the whole big thing, blood is gold, and gold buys guns and friends in high places. I need a break from all this talk. Well, you sure know how to ride the horse, and now I don't say anything else. We're going a bit faster now. Dakota clears her throat. Well, aren't I just a chatty Cathy? Guess you bring it out of me. She leans in toward you so that her shoulder bumps into yours. Then she spurs her horse back toward Padre, who had stopped for some reason. You follow on when you arrive upon the two of them, see the reason they aren't moving. Or you hear it, rather, a song, along with the sound of guitar. Dakota recognizes the lyrics and says that they're from John Denver's song, Take Me Home Country Roads. Nostalgia tingles, hollow in your chest. The voice, it sounds like a man's, but it's so high and sweet that it almost sounds feminine, angelic. Each line feels heartfelt, completely owed. Such power to the music, it can stop 3 dead blood drinkers crossing the desert cold in their tracks. Make them homesick for a home they're not even from. Make them remember. There's something beautiful and desirable about humanity after all. Dakota's voice comes choked as she says, Pavo? Padre simply nods. You wait until the song's over, so you don't interrupt. Well, I don't normally listen to that kind of stuff, but I do enjoy a classic. We proceed to the haven. It wasn't far, just obscured by bush and shadow. There's a beige cargo container dug right into the hillside with camo netting rolled up and bound to the top, so that it could drop and hide the whole thing in a second. The coteries there too, Los Bonitos, the 3 of them, a man, a woman who look like they belong to a beauty magazine, sit on a front lawn chairs. They share smiles, laughter, and words you can't hear. Marisol and Pavo, Dakota says. They both have brown skin and black hair. She wears a black layered tulle dress with a thin red stripe across the bottom. He wears a cowhide vest, done so the cow's original brown and white pattern remains unaltered, but for the buttons and pockets, the guitar lays across the lap of his faded blue jeans. Dakota says they're pretty enough to be Torridor, but too wild. That's how you know they're with you. You ask again what a Torridor is, and she tells you it's another clan, artsy type, that thinks that they're a monopoly on beauty. Beyond them sits a man in the dirt, cross-legged, turning a stick into spear with a knife. He wears a woollen poncho, alpaca maybe, with earth-tone Peruvian designs. His eyes have been on you the whole time. Bonnie, Dakota says. You wonder how long he's been tracking your approach. His white face is dirty, blue eyes, blunt stumble, and crew cut, which, Brooks, no nonsense. Well, I'm gonna tip my head in greeting but not look away. I don't think that it's appropriate for me to look away. Howdy, Bonnie, Dakota says. Nice stick you got there. When Bonnie doesn't say anything or return her smile, even Padre says, in the right hands, the spear is like a stake with a longer handle. You get the sense that Bonnie's might be the right hands. Torpor is what they call it, the coma state kindred get into when someone plants wood in their hearts. Okay, what can I skip in this text? Bonnie nods at Padre saying so, then stands and shakes his hand. Theirs is a quiet mutual respect, a meeting of warriors. Dakota rolls her eyes and looks at Pavel and raises her hands to form a Y with her body. Pavel, she says. He turns in his lawn chair and stands and smiles. Mamacita! He hurries over and wraps her in a hug. You're late, but worth to wait, he says. Marcel follows after, smoothing the front of her dress. With the others paired off, she approaches you. A classic Mexicana, the thick curls of her dark hair hang past her shoulders, framing a round face with brown eyes and lips painted red. Her earrings dangle Frida Kahlo skulls with rose headbands, all made of porcelain. Mucho gusto, she says, then offers you the back of her hand to kiss. I say put her there, then turn her hand and shake it. Okay. You ask her if she speaks any English. She smiles and shakes her head, brushing a loose curl behind her ear. Before you can continue, you see that Pavel has moved on from Dakota. Arms open, he approaches you, a smile spread across his clean-shaved face. An orange paisley neckerchief that matches his vest laced the front of his off-white Henley. I've heard so much about you, Pavel says. You can't think of how that could be so. You haven't been around that long. When he laughs, you feel like he's good at it. Loads of practice, probably. I'll just give him a hug. I'm gonna assume that people that we're working with won't eat me. 6 of you come together and form a small circle. First words you hear from Bonnie are about you, but not to you. He says to Padre that he's surprised you could bond the horse already. Later you pull Dakota aside and asks why that's surprising. She tells you that most animals, once you turn, respond to your inner burst on instinct. Like they do with all predators, only more. It's especially strong with plant eaters and prey animals, since their flight response is that much stronger. Predators like wolves and hawks already share a sort of similarity, being where they are on the food chain, so they're easier to bond. Add to that it's harder and smarter and more independent an animal is, so she can see why Bonnie would be impressed. Hell, she wonders if there's any creature harder to bond than a horse, as wild, free, and intelligent as they are. Padre cuts through the chatter, says that there's less than an hour before dawn. He needs to have a word with Bonnie about a baggie, a private word. He doesn't wait for the response before he wanders off with the Bruja coterie leader. Dakota says she's ought to see about the horses before you bed down. She suggests you take time to get acquainted with the others and then leaves you in their company. Paolo returns to his guitar and lawn chair. Marissa moves to a piece of iron bread bow sticking from the stand and bends to pick up the horseshoe. I'm gonna situate my horse. You find Dakota pouring a bucket of water and to throw for the horses. It's easy to forget that unlike you, they still need some basic things like to sustain their lives. Having a little kindred blood in you isn't the same as being kindred. When you ask Dakota what she's got to water, she says Bonnie chipped out top of the boulder just over yonder so that it collects rainwater, kind of like a little cistern. Help me with this, will you? She motions to a piece of scrap metal taken from the wall. El Presidente Arnaranjo had built. The orange president. You lean against a rock to provide a sunshade for the horses, and then she brushes them down. The way she goes about her work, quiet and focused, makes you wonder if something's bothering her. You ask her about it, and she says, "Do you think this is where he'll leave me? Padre, I mean. With Los Bonitos?" You ask her why he would do that, and she says that that is what he does. He trains up 2 children, staggers their learning so that he always has at least one older one with him. Then after a couple years or so, he tells them to stay somewhere, usually with a certain coterie, to bolster their ranks or backfill them or whatever. Sometimes she wonders if that's how he keeps a handle on the whole thing, given how much land he has to cover, by putting one of his own in each of the places. Los Bonitos? None of them are his child, and what they do is important. Well, would you like to be left here? Dakota shrugs, and you get a sense she'd rather not be left at all. They're good people, I suppose. Believe me, you could do a lot worse than the 3 of them, and there's no lack of things to do. You ask if there's an open road or the company that she thinks she would miss. I don't know, she says, maybe both. Bonnie interrupts, rubbing her brown and black muzzle in your hand the way that she does at the end of the night. Dakota toes a patch of dirt. There's one other thing I thought could happen, but maybe I shouldn't say it, she says. You wait for her to say whatever she's going to say. I thought that maybe Padre might leave you here. You don't know near as much as she did when the one before her left. Still, with all Los Bonitos have going on here, anything seems possible. Well, I would rather stay with Padre, honestly. Listen to me, all grim, she says. There's really no call for that, is there? Dakota gives you a quick side hug, then goes about her business. You watch her lay a blanket over Lucy's back and tell the horse to just shake it off if she gets too hot. Lucky, it's the horse is Lucky, not Lucy. God damn it, we're just... We're not trying to mount women from comedy shows in 1960s. Lucky pretends she doesn't need the blanket but leaves it on anyway. She pretends not to need the attention either, but stays close enough to get it. Dakota asks you to give her a minute to finish up here and says she'll be right behind you. You leave, and unless you're almost out of earshot, you hear her tell her horse, "Yeah, I kinda like her too." I'm just gonna stop socializing for now. Before long, Bonnie and Padre return. You can't tell if it's concern that creases Bones' brow or if it's just his resting scowl. Padre had said they're gone to talk in private about the pink meth. You wonder what they said and why they wanted to say it alone. Padre sends a hand on your shoulder and says, "Manana." "Tomorrow." Then he moves past you to have a few words with Dakota. Bonnie's voice comes from behind you. "And check with me till morning," he says. You follow him to a hidden cargo container and watch him drop the camel netting rolled up at the top. Before you enter, you see the shadows of the others sink into the earth. The 4 of them, until the plane before you is empty and lost all the rest. Inside there's mattresses on the floor. You pick one and fall into it. Bone locks the door from the inside. "Well, I'm gonna be nice and I'm gonna say thank you for letting me crash." "No problem," he says. He walks to the other side of the container and sinks onto the mattress. Springs squeak when he does, then silence. You sleep, and in your sleep you dream. Dark, you're on the prairie. It's a place you don't recognize. Cracked earth runs a slope depression, and in the middle there's a fissure. The whole thing, it's some kind of caldera. One of those old dead geysers that sometimes flare up, but not often. It looks real enough to be an actual place and not one you're just imagining. You blink your eyes, and when you open them, you see an American bison and albino standing at the edge of the crevice. Your eyes trace its form. Shaggy white fur atop mounds of muscle. Beneath its short horns, pink eyes look right at you. Well, what do you want with me? The buffalo blinks but says nothing. It watches you. Somehow in the silence that passes between you, come to understand it wants to know what you intend. It stands and waits, and you're unsure whether you should approach. Then you hear a foot scratching sound. You look at the ground in front of you and see shapes being scrawled into the ground. Only there's no stick or anything. You watch until there's 4 shapes drawn all in a row. You're not sure exactly what any of them are. Never seen any of them before. They look like 4 variations of Ankh. The cross thing with the loop in the end. Well, I'm gonna try and remember those. As soon as you do, the wind stirs and wipes the images away. When you look up, the buffalo is gone. Then you hear the sound of wind flute, howling and eerie, carrying across the plain. You can't find its source. After a moment, it's joined by slow, hollow thump of the drum. No, several. The last thing you hear is a rattling sound like the fall of needles and dry cactus rainstick. You wake. Already you're hungry. Ravenous. For the first time since your embrace, Padres is not the first face you see, it's Bonus. You're in the cargo container and he's opening the door. Outside it's night. The heat of the day still rises off the ground, and the sky bleeds color, it blackens into dark. Padre and the other gang are already gathered, where 3 ravens perch on a cactus. When you and Bonnie join him, everyone says hello. Padre says he's keeping Dakota with him. He needs to teach her how to contact the princes of Austin, Dallas, and Houston by Raven. So she's staying with Padre. He wants her to compose the messages. As for you, he says he wants you to make the rounds with Los Bonitos. Puts hands on your shoulder and says, Ojos abiertos, boca cerrada. Eyes open, mouth shut. He dismisses the group and Dakota pulls you aside. Says she's supposed to brief you. Well, what does making rounds entail? Dakota says Los Bonitos make different circuits on different nights, but mostly it's just more of the same. Tonight you'll hit a ranch, a bordello, and a border crossing, just to learn the ropes. There are different kinds of places, so you'll need to handle them differently. Ask if she can give you more detail about any of them. She said she could, but Borna's on that duty tonight. Apparently she's on the birds. You ask what's the case. Why now? Dakota shrugs. Feel free to ask Padre. Maybe he'll tell you, but he won't tell me. I'm sure he has his reasons. I mean, I do need some food. There'll be blood along the way. Fair. How long has Padre kept ravens? I wouldn't say he keeps them, more the opposite. He sends them off in all directions because of Rule 1, no phones. Usually he doesn't make a show of it, so he must want to remind someone he's connected to the world at large. He never does anything for nothing. They're smart animals, ravens. So you don't have to write anything down. Past the horse Noche, Padre doesn't keep any family Dakota knows about, but she's never seen him call onto an animal that didn't answer. You say you thought he was the best at protein. Dakota says he's best at a lot of things. He's old, remember? Well, it's time for me to go. Oi! What is it? What is it? Dakota smirks. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. As you leave, she says, wait, you haven't asked your question yet, remember? You forgot about your game. When you see that Bone's waiting, you think to skip it for tonight, but don't want to hurt Dakota's feelings. Instead, you keep it short. What? What is it? Huh? Ow. What was her favorite color? Well, her favorite color to wear is blue, because it matches her eyes, or at least it used to be blue. Though these days she tends to wear a lot of black, so that the blood doesn't show against her clothes. What's wrong? My cat is just really not happy right now. As for Wall, she likes desert colors like burnt sienna and terracotta. That way inside feels like outside, which is better by far. Lastly, she guesses she come to like red in the wild. Before it seemed rare, just roses and some berries disguised sometimes. Now she knows it's in everything. You leave, and the last thing she says is for you to stick close to Bonnie. He's already turned and moving when you arrive, so you follow. You tell him your horse is the other way. He says he's not in the Lost Souls coterie, so he doesn't have the same rules about horses. Padre knows. He said you'd look after Bonnie. Before you can ask how you're going to get where you're going, Bonnie says, grab that. You're about to ask what when you ground or cover right in front of you. You peel it back to uncover a pit with dirt ramp and an old red Bronco parked at the bottom. Bone seems to enjoy your surprise. While you fold the ground cover, Bone gets in and turns the key. The engine roars to life. Light pours from the floodlights mounted to the roof rack. When he drives up to the ramp, you see it's been lifted and has huge tires with off-road treads. From what you can see though, the wheel well, it looks like it has aftermarket shocks and brakes, an upgraded suspension too. I really don't care about freaking cars though, I really don't. Take it on the run. Padre says you handled yourself well at the meth compound. Well, I did okay until the fire got me and then I ran. There's a lot to the nothing on his face. It's subtle, a bit of skepticism, a bit of something that's not quite awe. A praise from Padre doesn't come cheap. He was holding back, you know? What? Meow? Yeah, I know. I'm chatting too much, am I not? Yeah, my cat's really not happy. Good boy, though. You're a good boy. Yeah. Very good boy. You assume he's talking about Padre and ask him what that matters. He says the test was yours, not Padre's. You wait thinking he might say more, but he doesn't. It is important for you to know that Padre is stronger than you've seen. Apparently to Bone it is. From there it's quiet for a while. Well, I ask him where we're going. Branch 7. What about Maris and Pavo? Says they'll meet up with you later. They have something to do first. You ask how they get around. He says they have a couple of so-soup dirt bikes. Kawasaki's that can really fly. Ask him about his truck. What? He says it's 66-liter V8. Well, we're slowing down now. Gosh. So we park. An old man with grey handlebar mustache and white cowboy has come out, shakes Bone's hand, and asks what misfortune brings you to his doorstep. Bone says he's there to show you the run of the place, and the old man, Sam, he says his name is, asks Bone who you are. Bone says to you and lets you answer for yourself. I'm gonna introduce myself as Ocho, why not? Good to meet you, Sam says, and gives you a firm handshake. Bone stands back and watches, a blank expression on his face. So what we doing, Sam says. Bone says the full tour. Everything. Sam gets into the golf cart parked beside the guard shack and turns it on. He invites you to sit beside him while Bone sits on the back and faces the other way. What do you want to see, Sam asks you. You ask him what there is to see and he tells you. Ever hear anything about a white buffalo? At this, Bone turns his head. He and Sam exchange a glance in the rear view. Sam goes first. Can tell you they're rare, he says. Maybe 1 in 10 million. The ones that aren't just inbred with cows. Some of the little ones are born that way, but grow out of it. but full-breed mature adult? Never seen one myself and have only heard a record of 30. Most, we're talking about over hundreds of years. One considers them, then nods. To say that's good telling. They're sacred to a lot of tribes, he says. Some even think that they're a form of great spirit and go to them with worship. He watches your face as he says this and then asks you why you want to know. You shake your head and say nothing. Well, let's see the bleeding stalls. You want to be let out. Is that it? You ride the cart to a secure facility, the center of a compound where people move in but try not to look at each other. Sam tells you the facility runs 24 hours as a woman in brown coveralls drives a forklift past you, stacked 5 high with big white refrigerator chests. She loads it into the back of an 18-wheeler. Inside there's white cattle stalls and long columns running the length of the bay. If there's a speck of dirt or scrap of hay anywhere, you don't find it. Sam takes you to a woman he calls Doctora. She sits on stool in front of a pen where cow has its head through the slats. She wears a white face mask, matching rubber gloves, and injects plastic tube into the cow's neck. Just above the shoulder, blood flows through the tube up into the IV bag on metal stand. What do you want, Sam? I'm busy, she says. Just a little something about what you're doing to our friend over here. Dakota lowers her glasses onto her Doctora. I'm gonna mix up names by this point. And peers at you over the lenses. Oh, and are you our friend? Well, you run an immaculate facility, and I'm qualified to tell because I am brainy. Doctora fixes her glasses on her nose and says after a quick tells you she's handling the night shift blood extraction. She asks you what kind of things you want to know and you tell her just to talk. She says a cow has 35 pints of blood to a human's 10. You can take 40% without killing them, but she keeps it to a third so that they stay healthy. More blood in the wrong run, Sam says. You ask him how much it sells for. He says pharmaceutical grade he can sell for $250 a liter. Wow, that's a lot of money. You can get blood at the butcher's pretty cheaply. 2 pints in the liter, of course. So 1 draw from 1 cow nets him about $1,500. Doctora says it sounds like she needs a raise. Well, gracias, Doctora. Doctora goes back to what she was doing. As you exit, Sam goes on about how farming cattle for blood instead of beef keeps costs low since you're not killing the animal every time. That's about the time you hear someone shout out in your periphery. A bull bursts out of pen, snapping the chain that held it shut. Looks and snorts, then gores one branch hand in the stomach before charging another. Bone moves, though you barely see it, almost faster than the eyes can follow. He sweeps in and pushes the second branch hand out of dodge. Then he turns and seizes the bull's horns, stopping it in its charge. He grits his teeth and growls, meeting its eyes, and turns the horn, slaring the bull down, and kneels it with his knee on its neck until Doctora hurries out to sedate it. When it's all over, he dusts himself off and sends Sam to check on the gored worker. Are there a lot of accidents on the ranch? We should get going, Bone says. The 3 of them return to the golf cart. You ask if it's fine for Sam and them to see what they see and know what they know. You don't have the whole masquerade thing figured out yet. Sam's my ghoul, Bond says. You can say to him what you say to me. I've been this longer than you, I reckon, Sam says. He adds that they've seen their share of shit. To that, Bone only nods. Sam says this whole masquerade of yours is easier to keep quiet out in the great white empty, where everyone minds their business. You wonder how old he really is. Well, let's look at the property and the herds. You ride out the edge and the trace around, staying inside the fence. Cattle sleep in the pale moonlight. You ask Sam how many there are. He says 98. This ranch is little over 1,000 acres. On native grass, one cow needs between 8 and 15 acres to graze, more in wooded areas, less in tame pastures. Smells like cow shit, doesn't it? He says, possessed at the smell of honesty. Sam hums to a song and you ask what it is. He tells you the devil went down to Georgia by Charlie Daniels Band. You pass a tractor dragging a dead cow on the black tarp. It's having a hard time of it. Sam calls over to the driver and asks what happened. The driver says rattlesnake. He thinks there might be a den of them to the northeast side. Sam says he'll have to see to that. Well, let's hope it's not an omen. And now I have a general feel of the place. Well, I'm just here to learn. I'm not an inspector. Happy to help, Sam says. He tips his hat to you and Bone, then leaves. You ask Bone if Sam hadn't met Pedri. He says no one meets Pedri. You ask why he's really showing you around. He says he does what Pedri tells him to. If you know something he doesn't, feel free to share. Next you drive out to a plush wooden cabin with a well out front and lots of cars parked around it. Nice ones. Bone says there's a dirt road that leads in from the interstate. You ask him where they are. He says on the records it's private residence, but really it's a bordello. Not his kind of thing, so he'll wait on the outside. He needs to check the truck anyway. You ask what you're supposed to do, and he says learn. Parasol's inside. A woman in an elegant velvet bodice, crimson in color, greets you, hands folded in front of her. She says she's Marta, and she's charmed to meet you, delighted you could make an appearance at her establishment. He says, shall I show you in? Her black hair is bound back in a tight bun, which is netted with pearls. And, my honeys, I have been reading this for the past 1 hour and 30 minutes straight. And that's a bit hard to do. So how about I'll leave you a link to the game, and what would I like to call the save? Hey, that works. Congratulations, your saving and loading does work. What about achievements? 1 out of 42 possible achievements, earning you a score of 20 out of possible 500 points. I am gonna say this is probably the very, very long one that I've heard about. So, some people have gone all out to make their entries for Vampirejam Jam. And it's awesome, because they made really full games. And I can see the writing is perfect. There is no spelling errors in here whatsoever. The story is engaging. They wrote all of their own lore about Padre and the Autarchis and whatever's happening at the Texan border. It's obviously cowboy themed. The thing is, it is very hard for me to do text-based novels to begin with, because it requires non-stop reading. Then this one is a full game length, so I kind of hope that it goes well for them, that they win, that they get somewhere with this, because this is a lot of work. It is. And furthermore, the whole cowboy theme is just not a thing that I'm very, very highly into it myself. But it's a very well polished game. A lot of attention went into it. It belongs in the franchise. Like, these people, they went for a actual, serious Vampire the Masquerade game. They didn't just go for like a little bit of fun, like I did and like my friends did. They went full out, and it shows. but I don't have a time to read a full-out game. I don't. I'm still trying to finish Critters for Sale, and it's taking me a very, very long time, and that's like a... what? 5-hour game max, maybe? So there are pros to making very, very long games, and there's cons to making very, very long games. Obviously, you're going above and beyond for what is required for a games jam. You're probably aiming just for the sweet spot for what you would require to have like a full actual game out. And honestly, you guys should go and visit. You guys should just go and read it yourself, for it is a good read. But I am gonna stop this look into specifically Blood Frontier. I'm gonna try not to drop too many games, but I don't have the stamina to read a single game for like 3 to 4 hours straight. So I must apologize to the developer. But I'm gonna say that your work is engaging, and the work is good. Well, thank you for watching. When we come back with looking at a lot of other entries, and most of them are shorter than this, I believe. I suppose it wouldn't be that bad if it was a long game, but with less words. Because this is really doing wonders on my throat. Just non-stop reading. I mean, I like books, but I don't tend to read them out loud for YouTube. That's a bit of an... Anyways, see you around.